On a scale of 1 to 10, how accurate do you feel that you have a pulse on how your community, your city, your neighborhoods around you, how they think and perceive your church? Do they know about you? Do they know about you and have a false representation of you or a false impression of you? Do they know about you and have a half-truthful reputation about you? Or do they have a half-truthful perception of who they are? And by the way, that can sometimes be more dangerous than having a false reputation. We see this every day in the news in 2024. One of the hardest things to do is correct a half-truth rather than correct an outright lie. In today's show, I'm interviewing a pastor who recently became one of our clients, and something came out in one of our discovery sessions that just like, I was like, okay, hang on, we have to stop and we have to talk about this. And I was like, I made a mental note. I didn't actually stop the meeting, but I made a note and I was like, I got to email the pastor about this. And I emailed him a week later and I was like, hey, what you said in this meeting really got me thinking more people need to do this. More pastors need to do this. More church leaders need to do this. What I'm going to share with you is how to discover your church's accurate, truthful reputation in the community. And this is not just this one pastor's experience I share in our interview. I also got to experience something similar of seeing how unchurched people, or even people who think they're churched but they're not really churched, will think about your church and how that affects what others think about your church. Okay, I mean, think about it this way: it's a network. It's a network of people who know about your church. And if I have a false impression of your church, and my mom says, "Hey, we're going to go to church on Easter. Where do you want to go?" I'm not listing your church because I don't have the right stuff. And then not only that, and then we'll get into the interview. A lot of churches think they know what people think of the church, and so that informs the strategy. Well, people know we're a loving Bible church, so we're going to do loving community gospel-centered events. When that's not the case, they think you're liars. They think you got the same kind of leadership from 20 years ago when that bad press came out because something bad happened. Okay? And so all your efforts are in vain because you're not speaking to the people in the way they need to be spoke to. You're speaking to them in the way that you want to be talked about, and that's not resonating with them. You don't resonate them. They don't remember you. They don't remember you. When God calls them, they either don't go to you, even though you might be the best equipped to serve them, or someone else will intercept them with a false message that they think is true because everything is upside down, because the enemy is working against us always, even in our reputation. So this pastor, if you didn't read the title, has a special way that when he came on to a new church, to find out what that community thought of that church, and that informed his upcoming strategy of what he needs to do to get more people paying attention to his church so he can take that attention, turn it to Jesus, and grow the kingdom. Let's get into it. I'm very excited for today.
Welcome to the Best Known Church Show, where we show you how to 10x your reach with church marketing that will help you increase your impact, make more disciples, and become the cornerstone of your community again. This is for the leaders with an outrageous vision, because anything less would be an inaccurate reflection of our Creator. The ones who have unreasonable faith, because you know God works unreasonable miracles. And the ones who are relentless in the pursuit of your calling, because anything less would not make a good and faithful servant. If that's you, you're in the right place. Now, please welcome your host and guide on this journey to become the best known organization in your community, Justin Nava.
Welcome to the Best Known Church Show. My name is Justin. If we haven't met, I take full responsibility for that. I am on a mission to help 1 million churches become the cornerstone of their community, to be known in their community like the local Walmart is known. Look, when you move into town, one of the first things you look for is your local grocery store, and just in case they don't have what you need, you look for the local Walmart, and you know where it is. I know where the 2 Walmarts are right around me, and I know the one that I go to only if it's an emergency, and the one that I prefer to go to because it's just a little bit nicer, okay? People think of churches the same way. I know the church that I'll go to if there's an emergency, but if I am going to go to church, I'm going to go to this one because it's a little bit nicer. And sometimes the perception of a little bit nicer is not exactly the kingdom perception of what a little bit nicer should be. But we're going to jump into this interview like I introed before. This is Pastor Rodney Morton from Orchard Knob Missionary Baptist Church. I got an Orchard Knob Missionary Baptist Church and I got a Second Missionary Baptist Church. So I got to correct 3 years of saying second. I got to get that out of my mouth so I can say Orchard Knob Missionary Baptist Church. Wonderful pastor. He is brand new to this church. He'll share his story of how he intentionally did not drive himself to church and instead took an Uber so he could get an accurate community perception, almost like a heat map. Like how, are we hot on the church? Are we cold on the church? Do people have an accurate representation of the church? He's going to talk a little bit about what he found and how that informed what he did next, not only in pastoring the people, but also setting himself up to pastor the community. The video quality is a little off. I mean, it is what it is. If you're listening audio, it should be fine. But if you're watching video, he's got his phone up and down, and I didn't correct that, so it's a little going to be a little bit wide and then narrow and wide and narrow. But the content is there, the heart is there, and I really think you're going to take a lot from this. Whether you're a church leader, you're a communicator. We got a lot of communicators listening to this. We have even more XPs, executive pastors, listening to this show. You're going to take a lot from this, and I encourage you. I'm going to come back and we're going to take some takeaways to do this for yourself, for your church, because when you go out and ask what people think of your church and you don't preface it, your jaw's gonna hit the floor. I really think so. So let me pull up the file because I didn't already pull it up lately, and let's get into our interview with Pastor Rodney Morton of Orchard Knob Missionary Baptist Church. Today, I have Pastor Rodney Morton from Orchard Knob Missionary Baptist Church in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Thank you, Pastor Rodney, for being here today.
Justin, I am excited to be here.
Tell me a little bit about your ministry, where you are right now, maybe where God brought you out of, so we can get an idea of kind of where you're at in your life and ministry right now.
Yeah, absolutely, Justin. Again, thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. For the past 12 years, I've spent time in an inner city ministry in Baltimore City, Maryland. A very progressive inner city type of atmosphere, very diverse as it relates to culture. I moved there from the Bible Belt, from Alabama to Baltimore. It's quite a culture shock for me, but it was probably a defining moment for my ministry. It helped me to understand that the world is so much larger and that cultures play a significant role and how people view their faith walk. And God has led us, my family and I, back to the Bible Belt, the Deep South, so to speak, to Tennessee, to Chattanooga, Tennessee. I accepted the call to become the pastor of the Orchard Knob Church here in September of last year. We finally transitioned, and we are residents of the state of Tennessee. So I feel that God is leading us to be a part of a very vibrant ministry here that's going to reach souls for the kingdom. So we're excited about where God has us in this season.
I'm very curious of the Baltimore area. I've got some churches around the area, but I've never worked with a church inside of Baltimore. And it's purely a God thing, I think. What I've noticed when I at least consult with some of these churches, either in the proposal process or just a consult of road mapping, what they need to do next, I am astounded. And I grew up in Houston. I am astounded at the population density of Baltimore and just how many people can live in such a small area and how lives just really intertwine in a way that doesn't really seem, at least to me, I don't hear the same connectedness of living together for good and bad in a proximity like Baltimore. Is that something you found in your ministry?
Absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, when I moved there, the population in Baltimore City proper was around 800,000. Probably leaving Baltimore in September, that number is probably right under 700,000. So there's been a kind of a transition of people moving out into the suburbs outside of the city limits. But there are a lot of dynamics, I think, that play into that, whether that be the criminal element, whether that be poverty that's really bad in some inner city parts of Baltimore. But I can truly say that from a faith perspective, our church, the ministry that I was able to lead there, was a very community-oriented type ministry that you always had people who were looking for opportunities to hear about your faith. So there was never a moment when you didn't have an opportunity to witness and share the gospel. And for the most part, people were welcoming of that. What I did run into was people had often moved in and out of so many different faiths. So it was very challenging navigating the different faith traditions and values that people wanted to bring and integrate into the Christian faith. So that was challenging at times. So you really needed to be up on your beliefs, or else you would be believing something that somebody else was trying to disciple you into.
It seems like everyone wants to bring their own baggage. And I mean, of course, you can just read all of Paul's letters and see that that's been an issue for the entirety of the last 2,000 years.
Absolutely.
So now you're at Orchard Knob in Tennessee, moving closer back to home, I guess. But you're in a very unique area. One of our first church clients in that area, we did a lot of demo research, and it is a very unique area. What are some of the things that you're seeing as you come in, a little bit more fresh-faced, but also knowing that you're stepping into a shepherd role of this new church body, and also a little bit of a shepherd role in the community? What are some of the things that are going through your mind as you look to make a new kind of impact at this new church in this new area for this new season of life?
Yeah, great question. Probably the biggest thing that has been, what have I done? Moving back, starting again, like starting over at this season of my life in ministry. But it's been a welcoming experience. Just seeing that it's in the Bible Belt again, so you're hearing people every day and meeting people who have some sense of faith and want to be engaged in it, but also you're seeing a lot of dogma that still exists because of what people have been taught and not necessarily embraced over the years. So as I get here into Tennessee, one of the things that I wanted to do right off was to kind of become more familiar with the region, to just hear what the culture is like, to understand the culture of the church, the culture of the community, because I know that community influences church culture in a way that sometimes churches are unable to overcome. So I wanted to really kind of say, what are people saying? What are people saying about my church? What are people saying about the community that I'm coming into? So it was an epiphany for me. Sort of, I'm riding in the back of an Uber one day, and I started questioning the Uber driver. How do you like, is this your home? Do you like living in Chattanooga? And from that conversation, I said, you know what, I'm going to take more of these rides, because not only do I want to know about Chattanooga, I want to know about what people are saying about the church that I'm going to. And I would never let them know that I was a pastor of the church. It was kind of a disguise. They were taking me to that location, and they would pull up and they said, oh, this is the church here. And we'd had a conversation, 15, 20 minutes about Chattanooga and the church. And some people knew about the church, others didn't know about the church. They knew people who went to the church. And so I got a chance to hear kind of some interesting stories about the lay of the land from that perspective.
What are some of the questions that surprised you? Like, I'm sure you had kind of a set of questions, but did you ever have a follow-up, or did someone say something that kind of triggered, like, oh, I want to know more about this?
Yeah, well, one of the things I started out with was asking, is there a church? I'm new in the community. Is there a church you would recommend that I attend? And then they would start saying, well, my cousin goes to this church, or I'm not a member of a church. And I have to be honest that most people were Uber drivers says, well, I drive Uber on Sunday. I take people to various churches. I hear their testimonies. And they were kind of negative concerning church life, period. but there were others who fed right into it, who says, I'm not a part of that church, but my children are, my grandchildren are, my friends are. I hear it's a good church. They do good things in the community. They're very engaged. They're very involved. The Girl Scout troop there is unit is probably one of the best in the city. So I got some very favorable reviews concerning the outreach opportunities that our church was providing. So for that, it was a breath of fresh air, but it also helped me to understand somewhat of the pain points in our community of what people were experiencing, why they were rejecting church and faith as a whole, because many of them believe that the church had failed them, whether they were moving from larger metropolitan areas and have relocated to the area. They just had not felt the need to re-engage in a faith community. And before the end, I would always invite them when they pull up. And I said, well, just wanted to let you know, I'm the new pastor in town. I certainly would love for you to come by and have a cup of coffee with me. Let's do lunch or something. I'd love to, never trying to make it where I was just really pushing them to come and be a part of the ministry, but I wanted them to feel that that door was open, that I wanted to have a conversation and a friendship with them.
That's fantastic. One of the things that we talk about a lot is being intentional. Talking to the people in line at the grocery store. You got 30 seconds with them. Talk to the person next to you at Starbucks. And I like the idea of the Uber. You remind me of one Uber trip I took at a conference. And it was one of the largest, I believe it was Presbyterian churches in the country, if not the largest. And it was about 45 minutes from the airport. So I Ubered there. And let me tell you, the guy I got, and I'm sure you had someone like this too, if not, you will. He could tell me everything about every church. He said, oh, I'm going to a church conference. It's at this church, and my hotel is right nearby. And he said, oh, that's good. He's like, that's a good church. Like you said, my niece goes to that church. She got married. That church over there is where she got married, but it's a different church. And that church had an unfortunate shooting, and the community really came around them. And then this church always has food and clothes. And he's just telling me all about these churches. And of course, he doesn't go to church himself, but it really influenced, and maybe it was one of the turning points in my own ministry where I realized, people have these reputations, or excuse me, these images of what these different churches are in the area. And these churches have reputations to people in the area. And unfortunately, and God forbid this ever happens to any other church, but that one church is always going to be known as the one where the shooting happened. This other church is always going to be the one that's, hey, if you're down on your luck and you need some food or a new suit for an interview, go to this church. Every church seems to be, as Mark McDonald would say, known for something. Is that something that you're experiencing? This was in not too far from, not completely out of your continental area, but is that something you're seeing as you come into this new town with new eyes and you're speaking to these Uber drivers? Which is, by the way, the whole reason I wanted you coming on is I was like, tell me these stories of the Uber trips you're taking. Is that something that eye-opening? Did you see that people had kind of impressions of many churches in the area?
Absolutely. I think that every church has a reputation, whether that be good or bad, whether it's accurate or inaccurate. I think it's in the eyes of the beholder as to how they see it. And absolutely, I'm experiencing that as I move in. Even in the barbershop, that's a good place to hear things about the church, and sitting in the barber's chair. What brings you to Chattanooga? Of course, it's work. And then what kind of work do you do? I bless people. And then ultimately, you can't hold that disguise for much longer. And you're a pastor. And so, oh man, you're a pastor. So now you become the counselor or the chaplain for the barbershop, because everybody has an issue that they want to talk about, whether it's personal, whether it relates to church. But I have been thoroughly impressed with the fact that our church has been intentional in building community relationships and making connections within the community. The church, even among people who don't go to church regularly, the church is known as an anchor for the work that it does in the community, whether that's feeding the hungry, whether that's bringing programs that deal with health fairs and events that allow children to come for tutoring and after school programs and the Girl Scouts. And so from that perspective, the church has a reputation in the community as being that lifeline, as being someone who is helpful. It also has a reputation of being the church that can be a little snooty at times. And I think that that's a pre-COVID thing. I think that people would wear their Sunday best, and when some people walked in, they didn't feel as welcome. But I think COVID has helped us to make those adjustments. And people now know that there's a welcoming atmosphere here at our church.
Something that you feel is a good thing for churches, and not just your church, but in church in general. As a shepherd, do you like that you came in and there's already some positive reputation, or would you rather come in a blank slate and say, I wish no one knew our church when I came on?
Oh, absolutely not. For me, I am appreciative that we have a reputation that is favorable in the community. Now it's how do we enlarge upon them? Just this past Sunday, the Sunday's message was about the prayer of Jabez. How do we enlarge our territory? And with enlarging our territory, that means that we have to take on more responsibility. How do we make more impact for the kingdom? How do we reach people? How do we operate outside of the box? Are we just going to settle for the fact that we have a good reputation in the community? But what about the people who don't know us? What about the people who don't know the work that we're doing? And how do we win more people for Christ? Do we settle with doing the same thing that we've been doing for 30 years because we now have an established reputation? Because ultimately what's happening, that generation of people, they're dying off, they're moving on. And there's another generation who is coming on the scene who don't know Joseph, so to speak. They don't know the legacy of our church, and they didn't get that story passed on to them. So we have to, at that point, begin to introduce ourselves and reinvent ourselves to those individuals. Our online presence, we're seeing statistics where many young people only give us a short opportunity online and viewing from looking at those stats. So how do we change that narrative where we don't want to be a generational church, but we want to be a multi-generational church? And that's the challenge that we have, because generationally, we appeal to one generation, the baby boomers for sure. But what about the iGeners and the Gen Xers and all of those other individuals who are still looking to be a part of a relationship with Christ?
What is one way that you see? I'm trying to think of how to phrase this question. Let me ask it this way. Do you see having that, so to speak, reputation precede you? Do you see that helping churches in America today, or do you see it as a hindrance? There are some churches that I talk to again add on to that, there are some churches that I talk to that are fantastic community workers, but the pastors' hearts are aching because they're almost seen more as a charity than a faith community church, to where people have just set up this wall where if I need something, I'll go here, but I won't ever invest to hear what they have to say. Do you see that as that building that reputation of being involved in the community? Is there something there that you're like, I want to make sure I balance this line, or is there a mistake you're trying to avoid in making that? Does that all concern you, that kind of situation?
Absolutely, Justin, because having been in Baltimore, again, the past 12 years and doing an inner city ministry, I saw exactly that. It's like the old saying, when helping you is hurting me. And it was how do I help the church understand that some handouts is not a hand up, so to speak. It's how do, when one of the challenges is how do we be a true church that's transforming lives and taking people from homeless lines and the clothing pantries to now writing resumes and helping them to develop soft skills that helps them to go out and to partner with other organizations so that they can be gainfully employed. Because what I saw in Baltimore was it could be generational, where grandmama came, now the daughter's coming, now the grandchildren are the third generation of people who have looked for this church to provide the weekly food pantry for them to be able to have food on their tables. And so at some point you have to ask yourself, are you providing true ministry? And so what we were able to do is take some of the dollars that we were doing food giveaways and clothing giveaways and start paying young college students to start providing resume writing and helping people write their resumes, helping them with interview skills and things like that, because we felt that was a greater resource, that was a greater need, that was more impactful. And then once those individuals, it was like we wanted to reach people with the gospel, but we wanted to also retain them for our discipleship. And a part of our discipleship, we believe that we owed it to them to provide more than just something that they could live on for the day, but that man can't live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. So we wanted to give both. We wanted to be holistic in our approach to ministry. And I think coming here, much of that has been a holistic approach in the past, but we want to build on that. We want to enlarge upon that, because where we're geographically located, there are schools within our areas. We already have adopted school programs going on where we're partnering with those schools, but we want to strengthen that, because we believe that if we could get kids at a much younger age, it's easier to disciple them. It's easier to develop them and to mature them into the Christian faith. And so that's our aim. And so, yes, it is challenging when the church has such a reputation of doing that, but sometimes it becomes very difficult that you do not become an enabler for the community, that you really become a true transformer for people.
I like that. Bringing that, again, intentionality seems to be the key word today. Bringing that intentionality that we're not just going to give this to you, but we're going to give it to you almost strategically as a part of a discipleship process. Now, do you as a shepherd, one of the things that I have to wrestle with is turning the church from a body of believers into an organizational unit where all the promotion becomes about the church and the body, it bleeds into the body. And well, we'd love to help you come to church instead of I'm right here in front of you right now, let me help you. As a shepherd, and you continue to dive into this intentionality of being a resource in the community as a means of discipleship, how are you equipping your people to not substitute the organization or you as the lead disciple maker, but instead be intentional themselves?
Wow, we could talk about that for weeks, and it's challenging because you have to spend time, especially with key leaders, and building a team around you, and having good administrative support who understands that if they create this box and only offer me a chaplain position and not a shepherd's position, then they have lost the value that God ordained me for, that God has called me to do. And I think that oftentimes what happens in churches is that pastors are never allowed to be pastors. They become chaplains, where they spend all of their time counseling, all of their times doing weddings and doing parachurch work, and never having an opportunity to really build programs and equip people so that they can do much of what they're asking the lead shepherd to do, so to speak. And so it's challenging. It's building that team of people around you who understand your calling, and oftentimes it's constantly reminding them of what that calling is and the purpose for which you have been called by God to serve in. So it's a daily walk. I believe it's like Jesus when he takes his disciples. He says, he called the 12 that they may be with him. And I don't take that for granted, that in order to disciple people, in order to grow people, you got to spend time with them. You got to be with them. Jesus discipled 12. He couldn't disciple 3,000 at a time, but he could use that 12 and use them to turn the world upside down. Assistant and people around me who helped me to build parameters around my prayer time, my preparation time, and also my pastoral care time. Because if not, I often ask people to look at my calendar. I'll talk to people. Let's have the conversation. You were here 4 days this week. You were here for a midweek service on Wednesday. You were here for Saturdays for the prayer breakfast. You were here for choir rehearsal. You were here with your children for their 412 Academy. And I saw you at all 4 of those. And I had 3 other meetings other than the ones you. When do you think I had a time to prepare, talk to God, and plan to preach? And they look at me kind of strange and says, I didn't think about that. I said, so if I spend all of my time with you, what time do I have to spend with God? Otherwise, I'll be preaching what you tell me and not what I'm getting from God. I said, so give me some time to prepare, and I think we'll all be better. So it's helping to build those parameters around. I love pastoral counseling, but I often tell people in the church, and I'm even going through it here with my church early on, is guys, counseling requires a lot of time. And if we're going to engage in counseling, sometimes the best help I can be to you is to make a referral to someone who's able to stay with you consistently, because my role and responsibility will call me away from that in a minute's notice. And I want to be able to help you. I don't want you injured at the bedside of someone who's trying to help you.
Makes total sense, and I appreciate that. Let me go back to the Uber of it all. So you're coming into the new community. You want to see what people think of not only your church, but maybe some of the churches in the area. If there's another pastor or church leader that's listening to this and decides, Justin keeps telling me to talk to people, I'm finally going to talk to people. What are some of your go-to questions, or something you think of when you want to learn more about what people think? Like, I will just straight up turn around to the person behind me in the grocery store, and I will just say, hey, have you heard of Spring Baptist Church? Oh yeah, it's on Louetta. I had one person thought I was asking where it is. They're like, oh, it's on Louetta, and I just be like, oh no, just tell me what you know about it, and I would get different answers. Nothing against Spring Baptist; they're down the road. My daughter loves their Awana program, and some of it's, oh yeah, they're a great church. They got pretty much everything you need. And I heard also, like, man, they're always asking for money for something. I don't get that impression, but that's the impression this person got, probably because they just got done with a building campaign. Different things are speaking to different people. That's just me. I just straight up ask for it. I don't feel awkward. And they say, I've never heard of that place. I'd be like, oh, cool. And go to church anywhere. And then I'll try to turn it into a little opportunity there. But do you have a set of questions that you like to ask, or a certain way of phrasing it that you found got a better answer when you're talking to people?
Yeah, I think it's just random. But certainly, for instance, Walmart, at the pharmacy, I'm getting a prescription filled. I'm asking the lady there, I said, I'm new to the community. Is there a particular church that you would recommend that I visit? And so I would often get a number of churches, and then I would say, well, have you heard of this particular church? And I would get answers like, yeah, I have. So I think it's a matter of just simply being point blank. What do you think of this church? Do you know anybody that attends it? What are they saying? I think some of the greatest feedback, though, Justin, for me, has not just been the Uber rides and the random questions in grocery stores and at Walmart. It has been by people who visit the church. I encourage them to scan the QR code, fill it out, send me their information, and then after kind of building a relationship, just thanking them for coming. And some of them who join, my question always through new membership orientation is, what was it that brought you back the second time to our church? And people began to say, well, it was a sermon that spoke to me, or the music, or the people were friendly. And then I says, well, you're the newest member of our church. Tell me, if there was one thing that you would recommend that we do better, what would it be? And I do that to try to see if there's a pattern for people, or can I find something that is consistent? Sometimes people say, well, it would be helpful if the greeters could show me which door to enter. Most of the time I just follow the traffic and I don't know if I'm going the right way. So things of that nature. If the parking lot attendants could be more helpful. I didn't know if I was parking in the right place. And then if your website advertised more about youth stuff. So new eyes see things that people who have been here a while don't see. And that's why, as a new pastor, I think it's, you have these philosophies and thoughts. You wait a while before you begin to change things. But I like coming in early on because I see things so fresh. After being there a while, the abnormal has a tendency to become normal. And I don't like to do that. So I like to address issues early on. And sort of like Nehemiah, when he raises the question with the people who were in Jerusalem, he said, can you not see the trouble you're in? Can you not see that the walls are still down? Can you not see that you're a reproach to everybody? So I think it's what people see, is it touching their hearts? Because if it touches our eyes and never touch our hearts, we'll never be moved to do anything about it.
100% what you just said, all of that. The biggest, the fastest turnaround we ever had on a Connect card, someone actually wrote on a Connect card, I need a pen, because we kept telling people, fill out the Connect card, but I guess they didn't have a pen, they had to borrow a pen, and we were like, yeah, if someone's new, they're around strangers, they're gonna feel awkward asking for a pen. So we started putting a pen on every seat. And after that, we had more Connect cards coming in because people just had a pen. So I thought that was great. I like what you said. It reminds me of something a friend, Billy Taylor, told me when we were buying this house. I was doing a big project with him, and we were talking about just going through the process. And he said, when you own a house, you learn you can live with a lot of broken things. And I realize now that I've been a homeowner for going on 4 years now this year, and there are so many broken things that when we moved in, let me tell you, the wife, we got to fix this. We got to fix this. We got to fix this. And even I'm like, I hate this. I don't like this. We're going to fix this. And those things are still broken now because we've been here long enough. Even after the first few months, it became invisible to us. Either we became used to it, apathetic to it. You just got to slam the back door. It doesn't close lightly. You got to slam it. You can't,
Right.
There's this one banister thing that the kids will play with. Don't play with it. Don't just keep walking them up. This one floorboard creaks or whatever, and just different things around the house. You just grow blind to it. And we noticed it when we moved in, but now that we're here, it's just a part of life. And I like the way you said that. You come in, you want to take some time, but also, I mean, you have a honeymoon period where you can pretty much ask within reason, and you can get things done in a way no other pastor in the past could, simply because you're in this new period. So having the advantage of the fresh eyes, having the advantage of, I'm brand new to town, let's see what people are talking about, and also having the advantage of, I'm new here. God's brought me here with a new vision or a renewed vision and new leadership, fresh eyes. Let's go ahead and take advantage of this. I think is a great combination of all the few. So as you came in, obviously we connected because you were referred to us. We're looking at your website, and we're doing a couple of other things to get you ready for Easter. What were some of the things that you're noticing, if you're okay sharing, that you said this is a priority, like the website we brought together on, and some other things where you said this is a nice to have, but there's really more of a priority because of what God's given us a vision to do? What's your thought process behind some of the things you're deciding to do within your first year?
Yeah. And I purposely came in with the intent to say, what's the low-hanging fruit? What's the non-negotiables that I know that we need to change? As a leader, having pastored for some time, you look at infrastructure, you look at systems that are in place. How are these systems helping you to be effective and to be able to do ministry? And so certainly you want to learn personalities, you want to learn people, you want to learn names of people, kind of get a feel for the culture of what the church is like, how do things function. And so I'm observing things, and I'm sitting there trying to put the brakes on because do I address this now? If I let it go, it's going to be perceived that I'm okay with it. And so it was like things that were being posted on the webpage. Is this really the message that we want to convey to the public? How is our messaging, our branding? How, I want to have this brand that when we see it, we know that it represents our church. This is us, and trying to streamline where we don't have everybody speaking on behalf of the ministry, that we have the best messaging on Front Street, so to speak. So those were kind of some of the things. Also, looking at the website. As a candidate, I looked at that website. I knew it was going to change. I just wanted and then I had a realtor. We were riding together, and the realtor was interviewing me, and I was interviewing her. And she started talking about things that she said, "What's your philosophy on this?" And I said, "This is my greatest opportunity to start pastoring." So because I knew that she had influence over a number of people, so I started saying, "I don't like this. I don't like that." I said, "I think we can change it." I said, "But I want to teach as to why we do certain things." I said, "I'd like to be able to have change management. There's one thing to change. There's another thing to have a change management process. So I want people to understand why we change. For instance, altar workers, people who come up at the end of service when the invitation is extended. We have all kinds of people in the church. I said, if we are going to meet every generation, we need someone representing every generation who is trained to extend the invitation, to walk people through the plan of salvation. We don't just need a male-dominated group. We don't need a female-dominated group. We need representatives from all generations to represent that. I knew that could be somewhat of a sticky situation coming in because of the culture of the church. But again, it was embraced because people understood why we were doing it. I think if people understand the why of the change, it's better accepted and embraced, and people are willing to be your cheerleader. And many of the things that I've raised are things that were raised 5 years ago or 7 years ago, but somewhere along the line, people got too busy, COVID hit, and it was derailed. Now it becomes so much easier to say, let's get this done. We've got a new leader. He's talking about it. So I know I have to take advantage of the honeymoon period, but there are some things that I recognize is not worth the human capital spent on it. So I said, we'll wait and do it later. But there are some things that we just have to, and I don't want to go into detail and depth because I'm still working on those things. It's like giving preemptive strikes. People know where you're coming. And if they know where you're coming, they start building barriers to keep you from being there.
100%. So I appreciate that insight. Last question for you right now. Coming in as a new pastor, a new position, we've got a lot of church leaders, executive pastors, church communicators, volunteers that listen to this. All with the goal of one thing. This is the best known church show. We want your church to be best known for what God's gifted you to do, for the people he's gifted you to reach. If you could cast a vision 10 years from now, what Orchard Knob should be best known for, your church should be best known for, what would you like that to be?
Yeah, Justin, that's a great question. Coming in as a new pastor, you always want your church to be known as a vibrant ministry that's reaching people from every generation throughout your community, that has a strong holistic approach to ministry, that that balances both the sacred and the secular, that simply bridges that gap between sociology and theology, that allows people to be able who find themselves on the margins and living life outside of the lines, to know that this church is a place sort of like Noah when he came out of the ark. You may have gone through the worst storm, but we're here to let you know that when the boat settles, it's going to settle at a different place, at a higher place. It's going to settle on Mount Ararat. Everything that you go through shouldn't bring you lower, but takes you higher. And we're here to help you get to that higher place in life. And that's with God. So it's helping people understand that this is a rescue. This is a place that will rescue the perishing, that we will join hand and heart with you to ensure that we will walk with you through those difficult places. It's a lighthouse. It's a place that offers hope to the hurting, and for those who are suffering, a place that they can come and find a safe place, a non-judgmental place, a place where all races, all generations of people, regardless of their past, regardless of their present, we believe that there's a brighter future. So it's a place that ministers to people who are hurting and who needs healing. It's a healing station.
And just like you said, in those Uber cars, people are saying, my cousin goes there. This church is great at that. The reputation is going to be out there. So it's up to us as the leaders and communicators, and even agencies like ours working alongside with you, that we put the right reputation out there, the right message that communicates. So eventually, when someone feels that pull, they're going to do three things. They're going to go to who they already know. They're going to ask their friends or their cousin, who my friends and family know, or they're going to go to who Google knows. And at each of those steps, your church should be there with that kind of intentional message. And I appreciate you, Pastor, taking the initiative to realize the priority of that, especially in this season with your church, to take advantage of the timing. Let me ask you this. If someone has a question, maybe another pastor who's about to go into a new area, or someone maybe in the area wants to connect with you, is it okay if someone reaches out to you, and how should they do that?
Absolutely. They can reach me here at the church. They can also email me. I'm also on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Pastor Rodney Morton, Orchard Knob Missionary Baptist Church .org. They can reach me that way. I'm also reachable here at the church. It's 423. I'm new to the church. I'm having to look over here and make sure I'm getting this right. 541 3898, and they can reach me here at the church. I'd love an opportunity to speak with them, or quickest way is probably to reach out to me by email again, Pastor Morton at orchardknob.org. I love the opportunity because I believe that it takes a village. We're all in this together. I believe that if we can, iron sharpens irons. We're in a community of shared wisdom. We can learn from each other. We owe it to each other to be able to share that. I think one of the things that I love to do is to practice the principles of Nehemiah. Sometimes moving into this new place, I've taken some time to just get alone and find this moment to just have a moment with God. God, what are you really saying to me in this season? What is it that you really want me to do? Because I think it's easy to come into a new place, get so involved in the work that you never step back and see the whole scope of what's involved. And I think that's what Nehemiah was doing, was recognizing, how can I get people to recognize and to see what is right before them, and to do something about it. Because I can see it all day long, but if I can never cast a vision as to where people see it, nothing gets done. The walls still remain down, but we can be a Nehemiah ministry that can turn things around in a very short period of time, because we have a mind to work together to accomplish that for God.
Appreciate your time today, Pastor.
Thank you.
All right. So there you have our interview with Pastor Rodney Morton, Orchard Knob Missionary Baptist Church. Fantastic gentlemen, fantastic pastor. I'm very excited to get the chance to work alongside them and now plant deeper roots in that community. I first started working with a church in Chattanooga. I can't remember if it was right before 2020 or right after, but I know it was around that time. And I think it was right after, because that was when they were like, oh, we need to figure out our online stuff. And through that relationship, I was then referred over to Orchard Knob, Missionary Baptist Church. So I absolutely love that. Just to recap a few things. Number one, asking people in your community about your church is a fantastic way to figure out what the raw feelings and the real facts of your church are in the community. I would love a couple notes that I took. Number one, take an Uber to your church. Do it a few times so you get kind of a diverse group of opinions and thoughts. And I think there's a way to marry kind of how we approach marketing, in that when people want something, specifically in this case when they want a church, they first think about, who do I know? Then they think about, who do my friends and family know? And then if they don't have friends or family, or they don't know anyone, they're going to say, who does Google know? And I think you can follow something similar when you're asking someone, in this case, let's say an Uber driver, hey, I'm going to this church. Have you heard of this church? And they, I've never heard of this church. Or yeah, I've heard about it. And I personally would make a joke of it. Right? I would say, oh, okay, am I going, do I need to turn around? Do you need to park? And then I'll just Uber back to my house. Like, what do you know about this church? Right? And if they say, no, I don't know anything, I haven't heard. Okay, well, have you heard of any other churches in the area? You're kind of turning them into the friends and family in this case. Yeah, in case this church doesn't work out for me, I know every church is different. Do you have any recommendations on a church I should check out next? We're new to the area. I'm not necessarily married to Baptist or Calvinist or Presbyterian or whatever. And then if they say, well, I don't know, me being a weirdo I am, okay, cool. Well, here are some of the other churches I found in Google. I would actually kind of like think about the other churches that are doing something similar as us, or something radically different. I would choose one of the extremes and say, well, I also found this church on Google. Have you heard of that church? Like, you're really taking it's the Socrates method, right? You're just asking questions. You're coming at it as a curiosity. And have you been to this church? Well, I don't know about this church. Okay, well, have you heard of any churches around here? Okay. And I also found this other church on Google. It seems like they're doing a lot in the community. What do you know about them? Don't run through those questions like a quiz, but just have those in my back pocket. One of the things that I've discovered as part of my sales training, and it has bled into my own personal ministry, is having a script of questions, not on a note card. So you're like, hey, Mr. Uber driver, thanks for picking me up. Listen, have you heard of this church? Don't do that. But just having some preset questions of, I know what I'm going to ask this person. Another thing I wrote down was, you don't necessarily have to be going to that church. I think that can sometimes, I brought it up to Pastor, do you feel like sometimes the questions are framed different? The answers are framed because you're going to that church, they don't want to speak anything bad, which I think is a good thing. And one of the things I thought about during this is, what if I could strategically go from my house? Okay, so if I'm going from my house, if I Uber to Old Town Spring, I'm going to pass a few churches. And I'm wondering if I could go to someone's house and, a little camera glitch there. I'm wondering if I could go to someone's house and then pick a spot on the other side of town or down a few blocks where I pass my church, and I can Uber there. And as I pass it, be like, oh, there's a church there. I never really noticed. I wouldn't lie like that. Oh, there's a church there. Have you heard of that church? It seems pretty big. And see what they say. Like, you're not even connected. You're not even like framing it as, I'm going to this as my destination. Don't say anything bad. Don't hurt my feelings. Don't make my morning awkward. But it's just, oh, hey, look at that church. That's a big, beautiful building. I don't know. What do you think? I think that's a really cool way to get an Uber driver's non-biased opinion. And like I said, I've done this in the grocery store before. I've actually turned around to the person behind me. I put all my stuff on the conveyor belt. I was like, hey, have you heard of this church down the road? And you'll be surprised at the answers you get. And you cannot make... I appreciate what the pastor said there. Sometimes, your church might seem elitist and you don't realize it. That was our church. our church had the impression in the community, oh, they're just a bunch of uppity people. And honestly, we had that at our own church. We had that opinion about the First Baptist in town. It's like, oh, that's where all the politicians go to rub elbows and all the big donor people go to network and find people to expand their network and their net worth. And I had that false impression about a First Baptist in a town that we moved to. And then I actually went almost out of desperation, and we ended up falling in love with the church. It was a great church. We were part of it for 3 years, a part of that family for 3 years. So, you can't, I have been on both sides of that spectrum. I have been they're just a bunch of uptight people. And they weren't, but that was my impression based on a lifetime of experience, because I know other First Baptists are that way sometimes. Not all of them, just some of them that I encountered in multiple different cities. By the way, if you work at a First Baptist, let's talk about that. 832-861-7654. And so that was my preconceived notion, and I did not give this church a shot because they weren't putting a message and a brand and a reputation out into the community to change my mind or to shift my perspective. I was coming in it with preconceived notions, and they did nothing to change that within me. And it was a combination of God and just desperation that I eventually just checked out First Baptist. So getting people's unbiased, unframed opinions about your church is going to help you see how real people view and perceive your church and what the real impression is. Because as an insider, you're only going to see what you can see directly around you. And you may think everyone loves your church. And then you realize just how, when you're at a church of 350 to 700 people, and you realize just how big a city of 70,000 can get, you realize you're only looking at one small corner of your community, and the rest of it is outside your box. So I would highly encourage you, number one, 3 questions to ask. Have you heard of this church? Would you recommend this church, or is there any other churches you would recommend? And I looked up these churches on Google. Could be your church, right? Just Google your own church so you're not lying. Hey, I just found this church on Google. What do you think about it? Have you heard anything about it? And you'll not only see what people think about your church, you'll also hear about what they think about other people's churches. That could help you measure how accurate their impression of your church is. Because if they're like, oh, that's a terrible church, well, you find out they just hate all churches, then yeah, maybe don't weigh that opinion as heavy as other ones. But come into it with those set questions and find a place where you're comfortable. This pastor's comfortable in Uber. Man, let me tell you, I got the layout of all churches in Memphis from one Uber drive that I took. It was a 45-minute drive, and this guy let me know about all the churches, good and bad. And that was, I think I shared that in the interview. And so, and then also, try to not put yourself in the way of getting in the way of like, oh, well, I'm going to this church, so what do you think? And they don't want to hurt your feelings. I think being objective in that way would really help you. So thank you all for watching. Like and subscribe this if you enjoy it. I'm trying to do a little bit more on YouTube. It's just, honestly, it's fun for me. I need to get back into the video content. I kind of took a break at the end of the year because it was just taking up too much of my time. But now I think we've got kind of a flow going. Easter's wrapping up, and we're going to have some more time. So I want to do more stuff on YouTube. Yesterday, we did Monday Fun Day because I'm just one of those weirdos that Mondays are fun for me. It's a fresh start. I love Mondays. Mondays are my most productive days. And I just sat down at my computer for 30 minutes and just like, as I checked my email, just kind of chatted with the audience about kind of AI and different things going on in ministry and some of the tools. I want to do a little bit more of that free form. The Best Known Church Show is always going to be about helping your church become better known, nay, the best known in your community, so people will know you exist, where you are, and what to expect when they engage with you, so you can take their attention and point it to Jesus Christ. But I think there's a lot of other valuable things that we have in ministry when it comes to communicating to our own people, communicating to our leadership, mentoring others, as well as being mentored, as well as just things that I've learned in ministry and in business that can help you get more time back and help you save more money in ministry as well. So I'd love it if you join me. That'll be a Monday mornings around 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern, as well as we'll have clips going up throughout the week. We had some issues with our current scheduler, so nothing went out in the last couple of weeks. I just found out. Very upset about that, but we're going to recover and do what we need to do. So God bless you all. Like and subscribe. Leave a review if you're watching on your podcast platform, and I will see you all next week. Is the Tuesday before Easter. We might have a special episode that's not necessarily educational, but just to get you ready for Easter. Last minute things. Maybe we'll do last minute things to double check. God bless you all. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and I will see you next week.
That's going to do it for today's episode. of the Best Known Church Show with Justin Nava. Be sure to subscribe to stay updated on the latest news, strategies, and resources that you need to reach 10x more people and become the best known in your community. To send us a message or leave a voicemail for Justin to be played on a future show, visit thebestknownchurchshow.com. And if you'd like to work with us so you can focus on your ministry, give us a call at 832-861-7654. Until next time, stay outrageous, unreasonable, and relentless.